Okay, we want to invite Melissa to come up. But before we do that, we're going to do the pledge of allegiance. The flag right here in the streets. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we're going to save our announcements until the end and give Melissa an opportunity to speak first. So just one of my favorite. I had the privilege of working with Melissa 2 years ago when she was in the asset management division and got to know her really well. Appreciate her hard work ethic and drive to get things done and do good work. So as far as her bio.
Oh, that was scary.
Okay. We'll read it, but she's the acting executive deputy secretary for PennDOT, and she's just done a great job there. Has a lot of great information for us today. If you want to check out more about her bio, we can do it on the slide, and I'm sure it's online. Let's welcome Melissa.
Thank you, Jason. And right back at you as far as a hard worker. It was my privilege to be able to work with Jason as long as I did. But then unfortunately, he looked at other opportunities for his own growth and growth of his family, and we're all benefiting from that here today. So thank you so much, Jason, for all you've done and for inviting me here to meet with you all today. So good afternoon. I thank all of you for actually enduring the lesson to be here and wanting to have me speak. I see many familiar faces out there, and it's just so great to be able to be in person. I'll say that, I think we've all missed this, we craved this, and it's just really nice to be able to get together. And for those of you that are on virtually, it's great that we can kind of have that dual connection, if you will, so that you're able to be with us virtually and at the same time those who can gather here. So again, thank you, everyone. So I'll say that just to start, wow, what an exciting time to be in transportation. I'd say this last 2 years has been crazy, and I think all of us, it's been a big challenge. But I'm really looking at it as the opportunity. How do we take what we've learned throughout the last, I'll say, 18 to 2 years, and then use that to make ourselves better moving forward? And it's a great time. So much has changed rapidly. I'm not sure we've ever seen the changes in quick, I'll say, adoption of new practices that we're seeing right now. Oh, wow, what an exciting time. So, of course, with working with all of you, we take a lot of pride in our mission to not just take care of the roads, but really to improve the lives of Pennsylvanians. And, of course, safety is always very foremost in all that we do. I know we rely on you so that everything that we do, whether it be in design, whether it be in construction, on the maintenance end, really works towards the best of all to keep them safe. And for those out there, both virtually and here in person, I want to thank you. For any of you that are first responders, I'll say in your second jobs, you're putting yourselves in harm's at risk every time you step out to help somebody out, whenever that may be. I know just the last ice storm we had a paramedic hit. Fortunately, he was in his vehicle, he ended up being unharmed, but it just shows the dangers of being out there. We're looking again, that goes for plow drivers too. They're going to be out there in harm's way, trying to keep the roads safe. So for all of you that serve in that capacity, just wanted to say a big thank you. All right, so to go back to the safety front, I'll say, and kind of where we've been at with fatalities. So 2020, we don't have the 2021 stats yet. Working on those for probably March when we have them. But if we go back to 2020, we had 1,129 fatalities that were occurred just on Pennsylvania roads. Now that's increased from what we saw in 2019. 2019 was as low as we ever had since we started reporting. And 2020 was the second, so although it came up, it's still lower. Look at it, it's strange the dynamic we were seeing. You saw the lower trend across the country. But we also saw increases in aggressive driving, driving under other safe maneuvers, or texting, or whatever that might be. And that really contributed to the rise that we saw in 2020. And 2021, at least nationally, we're starting to hear that the trends continue. And it really asks you, is this just an anomaly, or is this a trend of what's going to be coming in the future here? So it's something we're certainly going to have to take seriously in all that we do, to see what we can do to improve. You know, it's the 1,129, and we're happy because it's as low as it is. Goodness gracious, that's still 1,000. That's lost lives. I think we all agree with one's too many. So we have to continue to do all that we can to drive that down. Obviously, we're seeing these trends, change those behaviors. What can we do with roadways to make them safe, make the best use of the safety dollar we have? So right now, we're redoing the highway safety plans. So that's going to be coming out next year. That's really going to put those strategies into place for that next year, 5-year period of time. So again, ask you to contribute to that. So when you're out there on the roads, you know, certainly the winter weather, you know, give that extra room, a big one, put these down. You know, certainly don't need to be having additional distractions around there. You know, put your seatbelt on, don't drive impaired. I know you know all these things, but those little steps really are what leads to reducing those fatalities. So everything we do really does that. So now, we know that the infrastructure-based funds, those take a long time to get through, but we have to look at it all angles. You know, we're looking at it from a public education standpoint too. And as you know, I think many in this room are probably helped as we got through the automated work zone enforcement legislation passed. That's been huge. Like I said, the first responders, similarly, we've got our construction folks out there in harm's way. And we're starting to really see the fruit of what those deployments are. What this is, for those of you not familiar, in work zone, they take a collection of radar and cameras to really detect those that are speeding through the work zones. The trigger is 11 miles per hour, so if they're going over 11 miles per hour, that post speed limit in the work zone, that would triggers a enforcement event. So that would be the ticketing, if you will. Just give you a little. So since we deployed in March of 2020, we've seen 4,560 deployments overall, so nearly 5,000 approaching there. We've seen 550,000 violations. So that's the ones that are reached that 11-mile threshold. So there's a whole bunch more that are speeding, just not at the 11 miles per hour. But it's really not about violations. That's not what we're trying to do. This isn't an attempt. This is an attempt to change those people. And it's starting. From what we're seeing, we're starting to see those reductions. So just a little bit, when we deployed in June of 2020, we were about 10%. 10% of those going through work zone were at that threshold and getting that ticket. 10%. When you look back at June of 2021, so 1 year later, we've driven that down to 3%. So it's starting to have an effect. And the biggest thing is our folks are starting to feel that. So when they're out there, they're noticing people are slowing down. They're more aware that they're in the work zone. So it's having that desired impact. So much so that we're starting to get some attention from other states. So Connecticut, New York, they both reached out and done a presentation, shared information with them so they could perhaps bring it to their state. And we kind of stole it and proved it, I'll say, from Maryland, and it's good that it's helping kind of spread that out. Because again, it comes down to keeping our workforce and those that are traveling in the work zones safe. So and I think that really brings about, you know, how do we use all these technology tools, the innovation we're seeing, to really improve how we're doing it. So that's the way that we can incorporate that into the enforcement realm to make ourselves better. So how do we do that? You know, I'm proud to say at PennDOT, I think we're among the leading states in various efforts. So, you know, automated vehicles, that's when we've been at the forefront. We've certainly been nationally recognized, even internationally in some ways for the work we've been doing. Believe it or not, we've been testing on Pennsylvania roads for autonomous vehicles since 2011. It's over 10 years. And we've been working with the developers like Argo AI or Locomotion and more, and their headquarters in Pennsylvania. We are going to be tracking Waymo's thinking about moving in. Pittsburgh's been like the hotspot of that. So we're actively working with these different participants to see what we can do to, again, advance even how we use those roadways moving forward. So we're doing that with strategic plan development, initiation of testing guidance. So this was big, how exactly do you go about testing an autonomous vehicle to make sure it's safe for use on roads, and of course ongoing research pilot. We're working right now with legislators on highly autonomous vehicles that would open up the door, I'll say, in legislation for truly a fully autonomous vehicle without a driver behind it. Because right now the law is still you have to have a driver in the vehicle whenever an automated vehicle is out on the roads, any vehicle actually. We're also working on, what's the future of transportation? This is one of my favorites. You think about how is this going to change how we use the highways? So, and even how we sign them. We know bridges, we sign those for weight and what they can handle as far as the height and what those restrictions are. Where do we have to go with that with the sake of highways? So we're working right now with the Smart Belt Coalition. We did a platooning where we took 2 trucks that were joined together. So the first one's driving, the second one's in a follow manner, if you will. Still a driver behind that to make sure it's safe, but it's really the front truck that's doing all of that. And we took it from Pennsylvania all the way up into Michigan. So multiple states there to kind of work through those interactions between the states and how the approval process goes and all of that, just to kind of work that through. Now expand that. So imagine what this is going to be like. We've experienced having the driver shortages. So if we get to this point where we can truly reduce those drivers having to be in the vehicle, or maybe allow them to be doing other things, whether it be resting, taking a rest period, or whatever. Imagine a fleet of 500. Now think about that. What does that mean for highways? So think of, pick your favorite spot, whatever it is, it's a power merge, you come in from the left side, you got to make right hand exit with it next to whatever. So how does that change about how we think about those dynamics? We have to start thinking about how do we post that or make it available on these apps is probably going to be more and more permanent so that a vehicle will know that it's impossible for that fleet vehicle to make that move. Moving forward, it's one thing, and we all know we're not building many brand new highways anymore. But how do we make sure we think about how we use the system a little differently and start progressing how we look at it? It's just an exciting time if we really think about it being transportation. So stepping outside of the autonomous vehicles, I missed one part on that. When we look at the safety, remember I said about that, you got to kind of have the 2 components. You have the autonomous vehicles and then you have the connected vehicles. And work zones, coming back to that, really represent one of the biggest challenges for the autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles from that matter, because it's changing. We think about it, you have to set up one day and then the next day it's changing. So we're working about it, US DOT grant, and we're going to be working on how exactly do we make those work zones better for the recognition of the autonomous. So they have technology now where they in essence have found that they can put, I guess the best way to think of it is it's a paint that's not necessarily visible to the naked eye, but the autonomous vehicles can read. So imagine you have a sign that says, right lane, closed ahead, merge left, and you have it in a way that's that it can actually read exactly what it is by that autonomous vehicle. You can still see what you always see, but it's a special signal to that vehicle. It tells them it's, so as we put those different signage out there, the vehicle can actually recognize and respond to them. In the same way, think of the 2-way communications with whether it be cones or barricades, that it's communicating to the car that it is there. We're exploring those type of uses and how that can drive, again, how these vehicles interact with the work zones to keep them safe. Also, just high definition mapping. If we get to a point where we can do push, I'll say mapping out of what that configuration is that day, out to, like I said, Waymo or not Waymo, Waze or Google Maps or whatever that is people are using, being able to have that real time so that people can do that. Now it's going to change again how we think about transportation. What's most critical? Is it the line people? Is it making sure we have these devices that are actually, they tell us when they're not functioning? I think it's just, there's a lot to be thinking about in this space and it's constantly changing, but it's exciting to be watching it as it grows. Stepping aside from, again, the autonomous vehicle realm, thinking about how we design projects. This is one that's a personal passion for me. When we look at the digital delivery of 25, I look at this one. I know I was talking to John earlier. I'm sure he remembers the days when it was all cutting cross sections to get to quantities, taking your little calculations every single cross section to get to your calculations. That's not how we design it. We design using computer. We need to deliver using computer. And we all know everybody's been in that digital space for quite some time with how they design, but that's not how we're delivering to our contractors. And I'll say I'm in a unique place. I'm no. So, I have all that information I paid for in design. It really wasn't passed on to construction because it turned into a PDF flat said. And then even worse, when I get it back at the end of the day, I have these red line PDF aspects, so who knows what they're at right now. Think of the toe tags we used to have down in our basements. It's kind of similar to that, but it's in a digital form. It's not very useful to the people. So how do we take that information? We take it from the design level, pass it off into construction, say, no, this is what we're confident with. Let's go forward and do this. And then at the end of the day, let's put that into a meaningful output, and then it can be uploaded into a GIS. So literally, the maintenance forces can click on it and say, oh, what kind of entry can they put right here? Okay, now I know if something should happen there, what we have to do to do this. It's just totally transforming how we use this information, and it's just time to. A lot has to happen. We're on that 5-year time frame, so we're looking at 2025, starting off on the highway side, building the bridge side, then getting into some of those auxiliaries, drainage, and other elements, putting that all together, and we want to come off to that point where that's in their model of truth and pyramid moves. And it's just going to be really exciting to get to that point. Because think of it this way, think of the time that people spend cutting the sheets, everything they're doing to make it into a planned sheet of documents. Now being able to think about that time and repurposing that time earlier on to start looking for whether it be detection of conducts on the utilities and something else. Or again, how exactly is that intersection going to flow, or those types of things. So it's not necessarily going to change how many hours we're putting down on the project, but it's going to shift it so you can better use that time. Cut down those work orders in construction. That's kind of the general concept. But again, what an exciting time, certainly to be in transportation. Some of the other things we're working on. You probably all know we've been in the e-construction world for a while, so our inspectors all have instead of the plan sets to walk around with iPads and bring up the plans right from there. The digital delivery is right in that. Think about it. They're going to be able to pull that up, even if it's not the full in the CAD platform. Say they're going to have it in a form that they can read off that iPad readily. They can pull it up, click on a piece of rebar there, and it's going to fly out and tell them exactly what kind of rebar that's supposed to be. Rather than having to, okay, where's the spec on that one? Okay, there it's at. It's going to be right there, say, where they need it to be. So again, tying that together with e-construction. New stuff. If you haven't heard about this, this is some pretty cool stuff. It's called Augmented Reality. We're piloting this right now. Doing it some in District 6, but then in District 11, where we're sending inspectors out with goggles, okay? And they have cameras embedded in. And what they're able to do is, as that inspector's seeing in real time, it's feeding back to the office. So whether it be people in a conference room talking, or people on a Teams or whatever, they're seeing what he's seeing. And it's actually advanced to the point where you can click on it, forget it, my kid. My kid has the virtual, video game, so I'm still trying to understand this. But literally clicking in space and saying, hey, can you get me a dimension? How big is that crack? And even in basically point what he's seeing, through those goggles and go point to there, and get an instant measure. Now think about it. You have a bridge disaster, whatever it is. We're trying to react to that. We've got the designer's sheet, queued up, trying to figure out, okay, what do we have to do right now? And we've got one person in the field that's got the whole, but it's really the knowledge base, if you will, wherever it may be in the state or even across the country. So we're piloting that. Think about what that's going to mean for bridge inspection too. It's just limitless things we're going to be able to do with some of this technology. And again, we're testing it out, kicking the tires. Similar thing, but a little bit different, and they might eventually merge. This came out of the pandemic, virtual testing. So right now, they'd be doing the testing at the contractor's facility, wherever that is, and the inspector would be right there, doing it right there with them. And what we piloted was having say the high definition cameras there, and then having somebody either out of the room or remotely watching what was happening, so that they could validate that it was actually occurring like it was supposed to. So like I said, combine that with where it could go. So we're already doing that right now, starting down the Batula. You put the virtual reality augmentation in that, think about where that could go. So now, instead of just being directly the static camera, you're seeing exactly what that person's seeing. And I'm sure they could pipe in audio if they needed to be able to say, hey, dude, can you back up? I need to see this or something like that. It's just, again, it's just such a change of technology. It's just exciting. You take it in on the construction site, cut down the paperwork exchange, get it where it needs to be. Of course, drones, certainly expanding the use of that, continuing to do that. And then that the vehicles. This is a big one. We know it's important as people change, they turn to hybrids, electric vehicles, certainly good for the cut down on the fossil fuel usage, certainly good for the environment. And when you look at it, Pennsylvania is the second city energy and industry use overall, but transportation is the second highest, greenhouse gas emitter overall. So it's certainly going to help with that. But it's really going to wreak havoc on us and what it means for the gas tax. And I know what happens every time I mention the gas tax, people start rolling their eyes and say, well, wait a minute, you guys used to be #1 in the country for how high the gas tax was. Or #3 is where we're at right now. Not that that's a huge difference, but it matters. He said, well, why is okay, first of all, let's address that head on. So the reason Pennsylvania's gas tax is high is that for highway and bridge funding, that's where we put all our eggs. So 78% of our highway and bridge funding comes straight from the gas tax. Now compare that to our northern neighbor, New York State. 18% of their funding for highway and bridges comes from their gas tax. They use other general fund taxes like go there, sales tax like go there. They use the whole portfolio to be able to have a fund transportation. That's not how we're set up in Pennsylvania. We're set up everything, or the vast majority of it comes from the license, which is that gas tax. So that's one of the reasons it's high. The second is the size of the network. And I know everybody's heard that before too, more than New England and New Jersey and New York combined. Well, why is that? Okay, well, if you take that back in history, go back to the Governor Pinchot, Gifford Pinchot era. And what was happening then is we had all these country roads that were dirt, and they had to, to get out of the mud campaign. And what happened is we couldn't invest state dollars to bring these roads up and pave them. Certainly municipalities could. So in order to make that work, we had to make them state roads so that we could pave them and improve them. Well, guess what? We just doubled the size of our network. We went from about 20,000 miles of roadways, not counting interstates, understand that it came later, but at any rate, 20,000 miles took on. So now think about it. That's 20,000 miles that, what not for how we funded, would have been the responsibility of the local tax structure to cover those roads. So that's really what contributes to what drives that gas tax. But it also means that we're very, very dependent on that gas tax. Now, put that all together. You've got the adoption of EV, you've got hybrid, we've got more and more miles being driven by more and more efficient vehicles. And the money that we're having is shrinking. So even though we bumped it up under Act 89, we're still a non-sustainable gas tax or non-sustainable fund. We've got to start thinking about things. Coming back to the exciting, we have that's some of the things we've been exploring overall. So we've been focused on last year, 2020, sorry, 2 years ago. Keep forgetting we're in 2022. We put together the Office of Alternative Funding, and we really started looking at what are the different ways that we can fund transportation out of the box. And we started looking at all those different solutions. Bridge tolling certainly being one of them, mileage-based user fees, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But we knew we had to do something different, and that was the whole point. Then after we got that kicked off, I'll get into some of the bridge tolling in a little bit here. Then last year, we had Governor Wolf went out with the transportation revenue option. Same type of thought. Think about it with your IRAs. We knew we had to do something to kind of invest in the portfolio, get a better mix of people to fund sources. So that was the whole. Really looking at how else we can fund transportation so that we can deal with those needs. You've all heard us talk about it. 8.1 billion is what we're underfunding each and every year, just on the highway bridge side. Start throwing in all the other modes, more like 9.35 billion. And that was the intent. How do we start closing that gap? And oh, by the way, gas tax is ultimately going to be going away. So how do we deal with that reality? How do we start taking those actions now we need to take to be able to deal with that? So that's what the study was all about. And I'll get closer to the end. I'll touch on those items that we found in that report that we're going to be working for. But the bottom line is that we need a whole host of solutions to deal with the problems we have. We're certainly excited about the bipartisan infrastructure law that funding came in. That's going to be huge for us. You're talking about over the span of 5 years, about $4 billion of formula funds coming in. 4 billion, so you divide that out, that's going to be less than $1 billion a year. It's fantastic. We need so much. Touch on what that's going to be. The lending program again a little bit too. So that even at the very base level, just if you didn't know this, federal funding normally requires a match, usually about 20%. So if you think about it that way, over that period of time, we got $5 billion. We're going to need about $1 billion to match it to be able to fully leverage it. So we still need to increase the coffers by that much. And in addition to that, this is the piece that I think people miss a lot, and you all will understand from the business perspective, is it comes down to cash flow. So federal dollars are reimbursable, but by that, it means you first have to pay the state dollars. So think about the mass. You normally run a construction about $7 to $8 billion in construction projects in a given year. So you have those bills that are coming in literally every day that are coming in, and the money going out. But the way it works is first we have to have dollars in that state pot to pay. Once we pay it, it will come back. But again, first we have to have that out of the state fund to pay. So that's another reason we got to make sure we work on pumping up those dollars. And again, look at alternative ways to fund projects. Now I want to come into the B3 project we have going on. And we're being innovative in how we deliver projects. We've also been innovative in how we approach projects. For those of you that remember that going back long enough, we had no bridge problem. We had over 6,000 bridges that were considered. The terminology then was structured with the fish. I know many of you were around for all of that. And that was in 2008, where I think it was 6,034. And over the years, by putting a lot of emphasis on it, we've been able to drive that down. So we got down to right around the 2,100 mark with the number of bridges. That combined with, if you remember the ARP funding we got, the American Rescue Recovery Funds, whatever those were, that. And then the other thing we did is we went out in 2014, sorry, with the Rapid Bridge Replacement Program. So this was our first venture into the P3 world, the public-private partnership. We went out with 558 bridges. It was the first of its kind in the nation. We learned a lot. So there's an additional 558 bridges we're using a different way to deliver projects. So now we're looking to the future. Okay, so what didn't happen, and I'll say that Accelerated Bridge Program, accelerated the ARP funded projects, and the Rapid Bridge Replacement was to deal with difficult bridges. What do I mean by that? I mean the big bridges. The bridges that few of those would have eaten up the entire budgets that we put to the Accelerated Bridge. Projects like the South Bridge. Truly the Girard Point. We did the Girard Point in Philadelphia as part of the park. To be totally honest, all we could really do was the paint. I think it was like $66 to $70 million just to do a serious rehabilitation. You're talking in the neighborhood of $700 to $800 million. So those big projects will not done. And now it's time to get to this. So what have we turned to? What's old is new. Bridge tolling has been around for a very long time for a very good reason. It's a way to get that investment you need right now paid out over time moving forward by using the revenue for people that actually use that structure. I look at it like a mortgage. I don't know about you, but I didn't pay cash out right now. It didn't happen. You go to a financier, gives you the money, then you pay them back. Same concept. So it allows us to get to a yes need. So what I mean by that is we can actually deliver those big mega bridges without depleting the entire program, which is kind of why they weren't done for this. Think about it. we were bidding, this year, or 2021, our goal was $2 billion. We looked at the South Bridge, it's about 650 million. Chris, those is probably better than putting in the room right now. You're going to eat up a third of the money from them right there on the bridge. Or a different way, eat up the entire interstate. That's about how much we spend on the interstates this year every year. So imagine that we don't do any other work anywhere else in the interstate. All we get acreage. It's a way to get the best of both. So is it always popular? Absolutely not. I don't think anybody in this room wants to pay. But it's a reasonable approach to how to do it. And it's a way, like I said, looking at that multifaceted of how to do these projects. The infrastructure, the bill program, absolutely we need those additional dollars. We went out to our planning partners. We know, like I said, we've got tons of these numbers. We said, if we could get additional money, wherever that comes from, what projects can we do? What projects are needed right now? I didn't quite say that. What we really want to know is what priority projects do you have right now that you can't move forward? And what we ended, we didn't ask for a whole lot. We said, hey, give us 3 to 6. 3 if you're on the smaller side, if you're a large NPO, even for that 6. And we pulled together about 170 projects processed. And it just so happened when we added them all up, we were right around $2.5 billion for them all. So now think about it. All of those 170 projects all across the state, being able to deliver that new money that we have coming in. Or instead of using that new money to do that, trying to do 9 bridges and processing. It just doesn't make good sense. We need those 170 projects. Those are needed in every single processing. In addition to these 9 bridges. There's still candidates right now that are going through the process. Some of you might be involved in some of the teams. I'm not sure who all is in the room, but they're out there right now. So we are taking a little bit different approach. I said we were taking this public-private partnership, which we are, but even that we're improving. So when we went out to industry, there was concern. There was concern that they're locking in so early. That we really know that was putting the squeeze on contractors, and for the same part by the consultants as well. We didn't run a regular replacement. And the reason for that is the proposers had to lock into a price right when they put their submission in. So we said, okay, let's do it a little bit different. We're going to enter into a pre-development agreement with these teams. And so we're going to go through the selection process, through their evaluation of what they've submitted, their technical proposals, get down to that selected proposal. And then almost like a CMGC, if you're familiar with that structure, work with them as they advance the design to get it finalized. And that's when we set the rules. And we get to financial flows, we get to commercial flows. So it gives that more time and more assurance that they have addressed the risk that they have, that both the constructors that are working on the project and the designers have an opportunity to really dig in and get comfortable with it before that price is locked. So again, learned a lot from it. That's how we're proceeding with that one. And I think moving forward, we just have to continue with that as we finish through those projects, get those out of the candidates on all through the legal process. Whichever ones get through that and proceed. Again, we've got those 9 mega bridges, if you will, like very large bridges in addition to the program. And again, federal dollars. Promised I would get to the program, and I'm going to do that now. So where we were, most of you probably remember Act 89 when we got that passed. Before that, we had dipped down to about $6 billion in investment. And then with getting the Act 89 dollars, we take our lettings up and kind of hit our high water mark in 2017, 2.57 billion. And then it started tapering down. Of course, 2020, it was just the impact the traffic had on gas tax and revenues that we collected. We dropped down to 1.6. Last year, we rebounded to 2.0. We planned for 1.9, and we got a nice little gift from the legislators. They added an extra $279 million that they had taken from federal relief dollars that the state received and allocated that to PennDOT. So with that, we were able to bump the lettings up to 2.0. And we were looking at the same for this year. That's where we thought we were going to be. But fortunately, with the passage of federal legislation, we're looking to bump that out to more like the $2.5 billion range. And on the budget side, we've been hovering around that $500 million mark for a while. We've been as high as say 550. And I think this year you're going to see probably about 600 million projects coming out this year on the small side. I'd be a little bit north of that. We're trying to see if we can get some seed money into some of the public facilities and construction projects. So again, we're seeing that increase in the program rather than the growth of the. Still not done. Like I said, we still have to get to that match. We've got to address the cash flow. So now we're going to come back to that revenue commission we put together. About 50 stakeholders across the state. The only member that was simply there for PennDOT was the secretary. She's the chair. And we kind of tasked those groups looking at, hey, what can we do? What else can we do to fund transportation? Nothing was off the table. We have a lot of great ideas, a lot of suggestions for maybe using cannabis as a way to fund transportation. But at the end of the day, the team settled on those that were directly impacting transportation. Similar motor license fund, we just felt that any funding coming in for transportation should have a transportation fund. And I'd say the ones that the teams worked through, the ones that kind of, we've kind of whittled down, if you will, because we've got the last year of administration, where can we maybe get political will? And we ended up identifying. So the one is mileage-based user fees, specifically for EVs. And this was pretty easy. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Long term, when you think about what's going to replace the gas tax, it's got to be some sort of user charging mileage. Something that the more you drive, the more you pay. It's directly connected. It's going to have to be renewable. But it's probably quite a way off before we're truly going to be. It gets into, well, let's not driving in Pennsylvania. Where was I driving? Where's the base? A lot of states are going to have to be involved before we can fully get there. But that's going to be what ends that alliance with taxes. But we've got this coming back to what we have to do right now. So the logical place there is to start with EV vehicles, because right now they're not paying anything. And that speaks to parents. If you're using it for it's just that simple. So we're looking to use that as a start, where you establish, we need new legislation for that. No bones about it, if you will. There does seem to be interest in both the House and the Senate pursuing this, where you could set if you're in that program, if you have an EV, you can either, it's your decision. You want to pay a flat fee, not mess around with mileage at all, you have the option to do that. Or you can choose to go with mileage based, so you report, say, monthly, what you've driven, and then you send your check in, or otherwise swipe your card, however that is, and you can pay for that. So that again, it should be a great entry for with long term with mileage basis. We have these. I'd say the second one is the one we've all been talking about for years, is driving down how we're funding the state police. State police certainly need the dollars that they use each and every day. We all need it for our own safety. But can we look to fund those from all over the source? So that's what we're trying to do. How do we carve back on motor license fund, use as much of it on roadways, and at least reduce the reliance on state police? So again, that's another big one we're going to be looking at to see how we can increase the state knowledge of transportation. Third would be, I'd say this one, if anybody's like us, I swear the UPS guy stops at my house nearly every day, bringing a brown box. And if you're something like me, then I think it's time that we start recognizing that how we use our road system is changing. So I'm not driving my little tiny car out to the store anymore, a big box truck's coming to my house. That's causes wear and tear on our roads, and we need to repackage them. So you put a package delivery vehicles where that box is coming to your house. It's something like $1. They're paying for that service, if you will, and at the same time, it kind of goes to the impact it's having. What I like about it is it's also, we probably use that for funding some local needs because their systems are getting used. So that's the third one. And then lastly, we've got to look at, sorry, just oh, that's the weirdest. Anyway, I'll come back to that one. One other we are looking at, and that's probably about causing some confusion here. Aviation, it's a little bit of a side note. Aviation funding, we're going to be looking to increase that tax as well. Because really their aviation fuel usage has gone down just as much as Pennsylvania has. Or has gas taxes. And my last one is, I guess it's covered, it is only 3 plus aviation, I apologize for that. So at any rate, those are the options we're going to be looking at, those are the big ones I'd say. So the mileage-based user fee, we're going to be taking it to the legislature, trying to get a package of rate tax in place. Aviation, that's outside of this group. And then lastly, safety base funding, trying to drive that down. And so that's really where we're going to try to go. Now, whether or not we're going to have political will to get all that done this year, yet to be seen. But we're hopeful. Like I said, we've already got some interest on the mileage-based user fee, the EVs. Right now, the highly autonomous vehicles, so they've kind of taken some of that spotlight. So as soon as we're done with that, we expect to move into that area. And then concurrently, we'd like to start working on the package tax. We have some interest on the EV also. So that's kind of what we're working on that front. I've just got a few more to kind of bring this back. Today it was announced, it just came out this morning, some of the guidance that's coming out on the federal side of the bridge funding. So you're going to be seeing that. For us, that's going to be around a little over 300 million each year, specifically for bridges, or at least in the first year. And then there's going to be 15% set aside for the off-system bridges. So those funds that aren't necessarily on the federal highway system, but as bridges, they're on federal funding. They've added some new caveats. I'll say if it's on the local system, then they can go to 100% funding, so it's certainly going to help out our municipalities. So again, if they're using that new bridge funding, it's going to be able to use 100% federal dollars. And some of the other things you're seeing out is definitely an increased focus on the bike and event side. And that's where I was going next. Because things are changing in transportation, I think it's a reckoning for ourselves. We've been talking about bikes and beds for a long time. But I think it's really about embracing that, really it's for transportation is just allowing people to do what they're doing throughout their lives. Not everybody has the privilege of being able to have a car, be able to afford a car. Some people, sometimes we tend to think of the, like, I'll say bicycles for example. Sometimes we get in mind that the bicycles are about, people in spandex that are out for recreation. And a lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times this is people that this is their own needs. Same thing on pedestrians. So after we start thinking about transportation, they recognize that all of those users have a right to access to the system. And you're seeing this in the bridge guidance that came out this morning. You're seeing it really focus on rebuilding the bridge, making sure that you're providing those facilities for bicycling pedestrians. I'm sure you're going to be seeing more guidance come out on that, and it's really going to be something that's really changing again how we think about transportation. And that kind of gets into the equity side too. I think we're starting to see things in transportation that perhaps we would never even thought we would see. What I mean by that, you might be familiar that, I-95 tore through Philadelphia, divided the city, broke up communities. And we're doing what we can to, I'll say, fix that with building caps across and various things like that. But you're also seeing, I'll say in some other areas, people are just slowly rethinking transportation. And why bringing it up to Syracuse for a solicitation action late 2021. And I saw a presentation on this. And really what they're doing up there is, and forgive me, I forget to call it because you're not meeting from Syracuse. But they're looking to actually use the beltway as the primary interstate and actually remove the interstates, return it back to the community. So cut back the right way, still going to have a roadway there, but really making from this big limited access to bring it back to on grade and use it to reconnect communities. So again, this is something I'm thinking to take an interstate and turn it back to a long roadway. But this is what people are thinking about. Like I said, when we think about reconnecting communities, it's not just about what can we do to make it better, but in some cases, totally rethinking how we look at it. So, it's just, there's so much movement in this state. It's such an exciting time to be in transportation. Us, we've named a director of equitable transportation, Nicole Tyler. She's joined us. And with this rule, we asking ourselves those hard questions. We know that we have destroyed, in some cases, Black communities. What do we have to do to think about that differently? Even coming back to public involvement, even this session, we've seen We saw this where we're using now both in-person public involvement and receive version. First was great. You know, people are crazy busy, so it allows them to show up on theirs. We don't actually come, which is great. We also have the in-person for the people that really want to have that direct person interaction. Fantastic. But the question you need to ask is who's not even having it? You know, if we're missing both communities, whether it be Latino, whether it be Black, whoever that is, socioeconomic, I would start getting them into the conversation because transportation, like I said, is to serve all, not just those that have a vehicle or not just those that are fluent enough to know what's at stake. So again, rethinking the possibility, rethinking the kind of doing. Do I have it all figured out? Absolutely not. This is something we're going to have to be working collaboratively in as an industry to figure out what we're doing next. But we've got an awful lot of work to do. We've got a lot of bright spots, like I said, we've got the federal bill. We've got the options that we're pursuing for additional state funding. We've got alternate means of delivery that we're doing that. Now the resources are coming. You know, now hopefully the pain of the last 20 years is over, and we can use all of this to forward rule what's going to be that future. So with that, I thank you so much for your time. I'll take any questions you have.
I have a question, Mr. The alternative funding solutions don't seem to capture out-of-state travel, which, especially in this area, we have like 50% out-of-state students. So what they're doing to capture that, and then all of them being the answer. That seems to get a lot of pushing. Funding alternatives are looking at pretty much that's paying.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Greg, because that's exactly right. Tolling, and then tolling's kind of on your way to the user's use, the way I look at it. Tolling, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, to your point, if you're in state, out of state, everybody pays, that's the key. Some of the downsides of tolling is it involves infrastructure. Right now, it involves some pretty heavy investment in infrastructure. So you need that gap. So I think the tolling exactly that's the that's the way you want that. It's a way it's a gap to get you to that point in that knowledge base usually. Because you know, you look at it with truck proportion, how trucks work with registration, you didn't do that. Pretty much every provider shares their information with where they've been traveling, how many miles they put in each state. And then at the end of the year, there's a great reckoning, if you will, where it's divvied up by where they've been and how much they owe for registration in that particular state. And it's all kind of rectified. So they really do pay, at least from a registration point, where they've been driving. That's how it works. So ultimately, a mileage-based user fee, that's what you'd be looking at. If, say, us, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, everybody's on a mileage-based user fee, you know, your transponder's going to know when we're in a different state. And then there's going to be a reckoning where Maryland says, hey, PennDOT, we have one of your drivers, you owe us X amount, and it'll go back and forth. And that's the long game. And that's why I said it's probably going to be a long time until we're there. So taking that first step in the mileage-based user fee for EVs, yes, that would be US or Pennsylvania residents, don't big start. But it's that first step of the game because it's one of those things, if you don't show anybody that you're willing to go, you know, or other states will start investing in that technology. Virginia's going there, a lot of the western states are. We're involved in coalitions in both Eastern Seaboard and transportation, the Eastern transportation, transportation corridors, get the idea. And then the other one in the west is the roadway user charging, western states, so we've joined that as well. So we're trying to keep connected with the other states. Ultimately, we're going to need all the states in that to be able to truly reconcile that with other states. But you're absolutely right. Finally ask them. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How have the MPOs responded to the different options?
Yeah, actually very well. I mean, they're for anything that's really going to help them meet those needs. They've been supportive even of the tolling. You know, again, they're looking at, they know their regional needs better than anybody. So they're supportive of anything that's really going to help that. I'd say the one that probably caused a little bit of consternation, a little bit is some of the package delivery. But I'd say it goes both ways. What I mean is some of the areas that they are worried about the effect that's going to have on the booming box truck or the warehouse. And I'd say it goes hand in glove, right? So those same places, it's, first of all, it's not designed to be attacked directly along those warehouses. It's going to be along those. But I think those warehouses that are popping up, that would be in the district gate area. I know they're out by me, Lebanon, and going in Reading, they're huge. Of course, going down to North, they've been huge. Carlisle, it's been huge, whatever. But you're seeing that increased impact of that traffic. So I think in one hand, they really appreciate that. There's been some concern with some of those, you know, what's that specific effect going to have on that particular location? Because they all look at it as their, you know, how it feeds them. But generally, I'd say overall, they've been very supportive because they're looking for whatever it's going to do to help them deliver those. Anybody else? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to touch on a couple of announcements here. You didn't know, the board officers here, many of us are in this room, and we're currently soliciting directors for next year's open director positions. If you have an interest in that, please reach out to Eric Marks. He needs that by the end of this June. On February 17th, we have a social at Troves with Pennsylvania Turnpike. So look for registration information. Anything coming out in the next week or two. I have our March meeting scheduled yet, but we're working on it. April 26th, we do have identified, locked in for the actually PennDOT Turnpike conference. So mark your calendars for that, and you'll be seeing more information coming regarding that. In June, our usual past presidents. This month's charity, if you didn't already donate online when you registered, I think there's envelopes on some of the tables, so just circulate those and us to make a donation there. You can see there's great involvement by many universities, including Penn State, funding research for grants. Didn't know already, this is January 22nd, this is a future city competition, and our section has made a donation for as well. And if you would like to find out more information about that or be involved, Steve Roman is currently in nominations. We have a lot of nominations that we go through every year. This first one is Project of the Year for the General District 8 region, including Baltimore, Madison, Easter, Perry, Franklin, Lebanon, and Cumberland County. We have projects that were completed by January 31st or December 31st, 2021. That will be eligible for Project of the Year nominations. Please consider those. I think the deadline is very soon, so you have no idea. We also have Robert E. Pearson Person of the Year nomination, which is actually a national action nomination. Section time those nominates somebody. If you would like to nominate somebody that you know, please let us know and submit those nominations to you. Similarly, Young Member of the Year, they could also be a nomination. 35 years. Member of the Year for our section, we will accept those nominations for anyone in our section that has been making a significant contribution. And then we also have the Lifetime Achievement Awards. there for, anybody that across the state really that has made a significant contribution to the industry itself. Please consider that as well. Questions are due to all McNamee's contact information is there on January 24th. Also, we have our photo contest, which is ongoing, and the deadline is today. So, what I did was check my cell phone and check, see if I had any interesting pictures. None of them were that interesting, but there's a few in there I thought might be a good option. So, I submitted one last night. So, I think we have two. We could use a few more. So, check your files. We want to recognize, cool projects, cool pictures that you see. It doesn't have to be here. It could be anywhere across the United States or vacations or wherever you're at. You see interesting transportation photo. Our Ashley student scholarships, they're ongoing. We're going to be sending out notifications to the schools here the coming weeks. So if you know of a student that's interested in engineering, please have them check that out. As Alan had discussed last time, we're opening up the scholarships, so it's not only engineering students, but it can be involved with trade schools and sort of supporting services and sciences that we use that aren't necessarily engineering background, but they have that technical background supporting the industry as well. So it's a great opportunity to check that out and support our students. As always, we are on LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll have this meeting on YouTube in a few days. Be sure to check those out if you missed one of our meetings or revisit some of the discussion. So I think that is the end of our event 50/50. Okay, we'll start with the red ticket. And the value of this is $90. The winning red ticket number is 4. Oops. I guess we gotta get the right ticket. Okay, so let's go with a different blue ticket for the blue ticket, the 50/50. My number is 218184. Does anybody have that? Okay, Mr. Decker. Yeah. Yeah. Check the number there. Red one is the door premise, which is the bottle of red or white. Running number is 49174. Okay, okay, we can get the bottle afterwards. Please. So, and thank you again. Let's give her a round of applause.